As the Chancellor of the Republic and Dark Lord of the Sith, Sidious had eyes and ears pretty much everywhere in the galaxy, especially during the time of the Clone War. Playing both sides of the war wasn't easy, and if Palpatine wanted to make sure he maintained control over everything, he needed to have a constant intake of information from both sides of the war. Those sides being the Senate and the Jedi. His spies all over the battlefield kept him well informed about the goings-on of the war, which was how he knew the Republic intelligence discovered General Grievous's secret base on Utapau in Revenge of the Sith. But Sidious's reach extended to just about every nook and cranny in the galaxy, including that of the Jedi Temple. Long before Anakin could become Sidious's eyes and ears in Jedi Council meetings, the Sith Lord had planted a tool in the temple to gather information that he needed. In this holocron today, we are going to talk about how Sidious, and perhaps even more Sith before him, have been spying on the Jedi for perhaps centuries, using an artifact that lies deep within the archives. So without further ado, let us begin. Our source today comes from the Book of the Sith in the chapter written by the ancient Sith Lord Sorzus Sin. In this chapter, it was detailed the construction of the use of holocrons. In this chapter, Mace Windu comments in the margins that the Jedi had recovered many Sith holocrons of the past, and among these holocrons, one was constructed by Sorzus Sin, with Mace Windu noting that it was created by the ancient Lady of the Sith towards the twilight of her life. However, under Mace Windu's writings are the writings of Sidious. The Jedi are so easily fooled. The Sith have possessed the Sin holocron since the time of Bane. The one in the temple archive was a spying device concealed with a shrouding spell. A clever trick indeed worthy of the Sith. It is absolutely chilling to think that the Sith were able to spy on the Jedi from within their own archive halls for centuries, and according to Sidious, have been doing so for nearly 1,000 years since the time of Darth Bane. It's fascinating because although we do not know much about this mysterious device, this would actually explain how the Rule of Two were able to stay one step ahead of the Jedi, and was likely crucial in it. The spying device, cloaked with a spell that could keep a Jedi from sensing it, would likely be listening in on conversations held in the archives. But what's even more interesting is that we actually don't know the extent or the range of this spying device and what it actually had, meaning there is a possibility that the device could pierce walls, implying the Sith may have actually been listening in on Jedi High Council meetings. It would make sense that the Rule of Two Sith would need something like this since they were not public at the time and would need the Jedi under often surveillance, and of course to ensure that they did not rediscover the Dark Lords. A living spy would be far too risky, as the Jedi would likely sense him. However, a technological device is a horse of an entirely different color. Combining with Sith magic via the shrouding spell, of course, the Jedi would never know that it was not a real holocron. None of the Jedi were allowed to go into the holocron as it was, not to mention it was a Sith artifact. The Jedi only had this artifact to keep it away from the Sith, as the Clone Wars era Jedi were forbidden from opening Sith holocrons. In fact, only the Council had access to them. Knowing that it would likely be disregarded, this is an absolutely genius tactic. The existence of a spying device would actually also answer a specific question about Sidious during the Clone Wars episode Holocron Heist. In the episode, Sidious hires bounty hunter Cad Bane to infiltrate the Jedi Temple and steal a specific holocron containing a list of Force-sensitive children that Sidious wanted to experiment on. When giving Cad Bane the mission debriefing, Sidious lists among the perks of the job that he would give Cad Bane a way inside of the Jedi Temple. But how would Sidious have been able to know anything about the schematics of the temple if not for a spying device that gave him that information? Sidious doesn't make any further mention of the device, meaning that it's quite possible that he didn't use it all too often. However, we can say that he must have used it once or twice in order to pull things off such as this. I also can't help but feel as that Sorzus Sin herself would have been proud to know of this fate of her holocron. But that brings me to the next point. Why would Sorzus Sin create this? Though Sidious doesn't directly say that Bane was the one to plant the spying device in the temple, he did say that the device had been there since the time of Bane, and that can only mean either Bane or one of the members of the Brotherhood of Darkness planted it in the archives. It's more likely though that Bane did this himself, as he is the only one cunning enough to have ever thought of this plan. The Brotherhood of Darkness was far too militaristic and had strayed from the Sith ways of cunning and deceit. We can also take this guess because it was only Bane who was ever interested in the old holocrons anyway. None of the masters in the Brotherhood of Darkness cared for ancient Sith knowledge. Therefore, they wouldn't have cared much whether the Jedi took them in or not. It would only be Bane who would switch out this holocron for a fake, and it's very clear that there would be a lot of knowledge of the dark side and wisdom to be gained from the holocron of Sorcerer Sin. Sin was a very important figure to Sith history. Sin was among the first 12 remaining Dark Jedi that followed Ajunta Pal in the Second Great Schism, and was one of the lead dark side generals in the 100-Year Darkness, which ended in the Dark Jedi's defeat. It would be Sorcerer Sin who would be the one to actually find the fabled Korriban, which began the Sith Order moving forward. Sin was the one who pioneered dark side alchemy as we know it today, and her journal is the reason we know anything about the Second Great Schism and the formation of the Sith to begin. Her prominence to the Sith cannot be understated, so it would have been absolutely devastating to them if the Jedi were to get their hands on this holocron, as significant knowledge and portions of Sith history would be lost to the Sith Order. Though choosing Sin's holocron to be a spying device is a fascinating choice, this could have been simply a product of circumstance, as in Bane may have learned that the Jedi discovered the location of the Sin holocron, and he would have simply taken the opportunity to swap it out since they already knew of it. Or perhaps it could have been a stroke of genius on the level of Thrawn. Perhaps Bane was aware that the Jedi held the journal of Sorcerer Sin, meaning that they already had all the information they needed. Therefore, it would have been highly unlikely that they would take a deeper look at her holocron. Sorcerer Sin's holocron would be the least likely thing that the Jedi would ever touch, which made it perfectly inconspicuous as a spying tool. The only thing on her holocron was likely all her research in dark alchemy and genetic mutation, which was of course forbidden for anyone not on the Council to view, and everyone on the Jedi High Council deemed the practice to be an abomination anyway, so it is highly unlikely that any of them would have any curiosity. All in all, this holocron of Sorcerer Sin would prove to be one of the greatest weapons for the Sith, as one of the greatest weapons during the Rule of Two era was knowledge and patience. The Sith were able to exploit the Jedi even further by manipulating the Jedi's tendency to swipe Sith artifacts and hide them away for nearly 30 generations of the Rule of Two. But anyway, my friends and acolytes, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on this deceit on behalf of Darth Bane, Sidious, and Sorcerer? And were you aware of this holocron before our own holocron today? As always, my friends, if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to our order. It is your destiny. And as always, may the Force be with you.